Hello, welcome to EPG Pathshala. This is Dr. Neelam Yadav from Tata Institute of Social Sciences, and I'm going to present a module on Environment Impact Assessment and Disaster Management Plan under the subject Social Work and paper Rural Development. This module has divided into two units. One is about environment impact assessment and auditing, and second unit would talk about environment pollution and disaster management. So basically this module is going to cover about conceptual understanding of environment impact assessment, environmental auditing and its application, various kinds of pollution, sources, hazards, disasters and its causes, effects and management. Basically I would cover about flood, cyclone, drought. So this is the outline of the first unit, what we are going to cover within that. We'll start with environment impact assessment. Actually, environment impact assessment has been initiated by the Ministry of Environment and Forest and it has been introduced in India in 1978 with respect to River Valley project. This is nothing but a tool to assess the impact of the project or the pre and post performance of the project. So this tool that helps to evaluate environmental impact of proposed development project or plan that visualize clearance after mitigation strategies or that included in the plan. Earlier it was started in the River Valley project as I mentioned, but later this EIA legislation has been enhanced to include other developmental section also since 1951, and now it is mandatory for 30 categories or projects that get environment clearance, then only that EIA requirement would be fulfilled. There are legal basis for environment impact assessment. There are few things which has been mentioned into that, like what are the legal basis which is given for EIA, like it should serve as a primary environmental tool that will clear provision, that it should apply consistently to all the proposals that with potential environment impact. It needs to use scientific practices and suggest strategies for mitigation. It should address all possible factors like short-term, long-term, small-scale and large-scale effects. It should consider sustainable aspects like capacity for assimilation, carrying capacity, biodiversity protection, and it should lay down a flexible approach with and provides for public involvement. It needs to build mechanism to follow up and feedback for complying to mandatory requirement. And it need to include mechanism for monitoring, auditing and evaluation. So these are the legal basis which is given for the environment impact assessment. Now the question comes, who is actually doing this environment impact assessment? Basically there are two important parties, two important stakeholders which is required to do environment impact assessment of any project. One is the government agency or ministry and second should be the project proponent, and if it is being permitted, so any third party or any consultant also can be hired for that. This is the flow chart which will show how this environment impact assessment process is being completed. Like what are the project is there. So first there is a screening for the project, and then there are within the screening they are doing some environment based requirements. What are requirements is there. Then they are doing some basic environmental examinations. As I mentioned, the pre-performance activities is being done, or there may be the third option, that is there is no environment impact assessment. But if this environment impact assessment is required for the project, so what are the scope they are looking into that, and for scope there is an involvement of public also, like how it is going to affect on the community or how the community is having any kind of involvement or role into this. Then after scope, the impact or the further assessment or the kind of performance which is going to happen with the project that is being analyzed. And after this assessment of impact, mitigation and impact management is also being checked. What are the mitigation measures, what are the measures to rescue out of the impact which would happen later on. Then on the basis of that, environment impact assessment report is being prepared. That report is being reviewed, and for review of the report, as I mentioned in the previous slide, there must be two parties. So second party can be the public also, so there can be the public involvement also. And after reviewing of the report, there is a decision may be the approved or not approved. If the decision is being approved, then it can be implemented or it can be followed up. But if this decision is not approved, so again they need to redesign, and again it need to get submit. These are the process of stages of EIA process that already I have discussed in the previous slide in the flow diagram. So this is the same one. After getting environment impact assessment, there is another thing, that is an environmental clearance, that is nothing but the go ahead signal. This is granted by the impact assessment agency in the Ministry of Environment and Forest. All the projects that require clearance from the central government, that can be broadly divided into these categories, like it could be related to industries, it could be related to mining, thermal power point, river valley project, infrastructure or coastal regulation zone, or nuclear power points. There is a policy statement of environment clearance. This is Ministry of Environment and Forest, that under the Forest Protection Act, Environment Protection Act, that has been given a notification in 1994 to make environment clearance mandatory for expansion or modernization of any activity or setting up new project that is listed in the schedule number 1 of the notification. So currently this environment clearance from the central government is required 30 categories of development project, that has been divided in various categories that I have explained in the previous slide, like it should come into the industry, mining, thermal power point, river valley, and like that. Although there are many projects for that, EIA is not very much required. What is environment audit? This is the next stage of the environment clearance. This is not a particularly new discipline, but this is means of assessing environmental performance that is there. Like this is the steps you can see in the environment audit process, that in general there is any auditing process. Type of audit, especially the type of environment audit are there. This is basically categorized in many things, like compliance audit that related with the legal aspects, legal mandatory things should be there. Environmental management system audit that basically related to the ISO, as I mentioned about the international standardization for organization is there, ISO. So there is the ISO 9000 series which is given for environmental audit management. So within that it should come. Risk audit, the kind of risk which would be involved over there, that is also risk in the sense of post performance or post the project, what kind of risk or what kind of impact it is going to have on the community or the people which would belong to the project. Due diligence audit, that is also there. Environmental impairment liability audit, as I mentioned, there should be some compensation provisions if it is related to the latter part, if any emergency or any disaster situation may occur at later part of the project. So that is the responsibility of owner. Environmental marketing audit, that is in terms of commercializing the project. Energy audit, that is the kind of source of energy, the kind of emission, and all these things will come out of that. Certification audit, the certification as well as the legal formalities would also come into this. Environmental performance audit, that is of course related to the post facto test. Audit on contractors and suppliers, means the input, the cost of productions as well as the parties which are involved in the project, that would come into this. Product audit, the output which is coming out of that. Cleaner production, means at last what are the mitigation strategies, what are the strategies to cope up all these situations, that would come into this. Basically there are 5 levels of environmental auditing technique, that is the supplementary out of the environmental audit that has been suggested by one of the environmentalists, that is the Welford. He has given in 2002 and he suggested 5 levels of environmental auditing techniques that is based on the central focus of the approach. Within this it has been shown it should move strategically and it should move in the hierarchy. Means this is the first level to a dynamic audit for sustainability, and it should go up to the 5th level. In the first level, the most basic auditing approach, that is compliance, that is related to the legal formality, should come into this. Level 2 would be, as I mentioned, like there is a series of ISO, that is the international standard which is given. So ISO 14001 and EAMS will schedule about the 2nd level. Level 3rd, that describe about the traditional approach for the environment auditing, which is taking a snapshot of the environmental performance at a particular point of time or on a particular site which is going to happen. So this is basically focus on the direct impact on the organization or site or the process on different resources, either it is water, land, air, or whatever is going to be affected because of them, or if there is certain chances of pollution, so there should be a contingency planning as well as for the health and safety. Level 4, that goes beyond the traditional level. In this, there should be change in the number of ways. In level 4, auditing goes beyond a traditional environmental auditing, means there should be change in emphasis in a number of ways. In fifth level, Welford stated that there is need to widen the scope of auditing if our ultimate aim is to move towards sustainability, because as we are looking for sustainability means we have to consider about the community also, we have to consider the project stuff also, we have to look from both point of view. So in that situation we need to look for the holistic approach, and there should be need to have a paradigm shift in the business culture. This is another unit. It would basically talk about the pollution as well as the disaster management. So in pollution, basically we have covered all these broad resources, and then we will move for the next step of the disaster management. Air pollution, this is very common and this is known by everyone. So for measuring or for controlling this air pollution, there was an act which comes in 1981 that was intended to prevent air from being polluted. And the greatest industrial disaster leading to serious air pollution that has happened in Bhopal, where extremely poisonous methyl isocyanide gas was accidentally released from the Union Carbide pesticide on December 3rd, 1984. So this was effect on in a disaster manner on human health and soil, and even it is felt today also. Second is water pollution. There are a number of contaminations which is causing water pollutions. There is sewage, there is hazard material which is being disposed in the ocean or in the water sources. Apart from that, the human factor which is polluted the water, as well as pesticides, chemicals which is being used in the land. So it is also ultimately going to affect on the groundwater pollution. So there may be reasons like disease causing agents could be there may be oxygen depleting waste, or there may be inorganic plant nutrient, it could be over there. Soil pollution, soil is also one of the resource. As I mentioned, soil is a strong base for the agriculture and there is no substitute for that, and there are a lot of causes for soil degradation. One is erosion, as if the land is being degraded, if the topsoil will be removed, of course that would be the pollution, or that would be the contaminated or degraded or unfertile soil. Of course, excess use of fertilizers are also one of the cause, because the retention of or the residual effect of the pest fertilizers are there. Problem with pesticide use, of course this is one of the chemical which is not very much recommended for the soil. And excess salts and water. Sometimes application of excess salt, or if this is an acidic soil and excess water is there, so there may be chances of runoff, or there may be chances of stagnation of water. So it could also cause for the pollution. In marine pollution, that is also defined as an introduction of substances to the marine environment directly or indirectly by man, resulting in adverse effect like so there are also many activities of human being which is affecting, like most obvious input of waste is through pipes directly discharging waste into the sea. Next is pesticide and fertilizers from agriculture that are washed off and land by rain that enter into water course. Then petroleum and oil that is washed off from the roads normally enter into the sewage system. And ship which carrying many toxic substances like oil, liquefied natural gas, pesticides, sometimes there is a huge chances of the spilling of the that one also. Noise pollution, this seems, it doesn't seems or doesn't sound very harmful, but actually this is also one of the kind of contamination, either it is in water or air, and that also contribute a lot of hazard on the human health, or that ultimately affect on the environmental quality. Thermal pollution, this is also one of the important source. The source is the discharge of warm water into a river, that is called as thermal pollution, that occurs when an industry remove water from a source, use and water for cooling purpose, and then returns the heated water to its source. And that also affects, it decrease the solubility of oxygen and increase the metabolism of fish. So this also change, or this also affect on the ecological balance of river. Control measures, that means passing the heated water through a cooling pond or a cooling tower after it leaves the condenser. So that can also be applied. Nuclear hazards, as I mentioned in the previous slide also, it can be beneficial and harmful also. It depends on the way we are using it. Like we routinely use X-rays to examine bones for fractures, treat cancer and many other health-based issues. So that is going to be in a positive science. But if we are applying it in a different manner, like we are having a lot of examples of this Hiroshima, Nagasaki and all, so that could be the hazardous one also. Hazardous waste. In our current society, we are generating many chemicals, many more hazardous waste which is coming out of either manufacturing companies, petroleum refineries, paper mills or different other industries, processed or product based industries, that is causing the hazards. So this could also be risky, or this could also create the environmental problems. This is one of the example of this hazardous waste, is that Minamata. Minamata, that was one of the important lesson we have got it from the hazardous waste, that was mercury. It was the story of Minamata, that was Minamata Bay, which used a mercury containing compound in a reaction to produce vinyl chloride, a common, that is a plastic material. So the leftover mercury was dumped into the bay along with other waste from the plant. This organic mercury that entered into the tissues of the fishes and ultimately turned consumed by the people which is living in nearby the area, and that contaminated fishes cause outbreak of poisoning, killing, and many people has been died, and mothers, if they are having infants or like that, so that also has been died because of this poisonous one. So mercury poisoning, this is called Minamata disease, and this is a cumulative poison. It can cause for the brain damage also. There is another case study of the groundwater pollution in India. Like we are having excess extraction of the fluoride contamination, and that fluorosis is, this is a localized problem. It becomes a localized problem, and like this has spread about 19 states and across a variety of ecological regions that range from the Thar Desert and Gangetic Plain and Deccan Plateau. So these regions are distinct in terms of rainfall, soil types and other climatic conditions like hydrology and all. So high fluoride concentration in groundwater, this is a natural phenomena that affects in other parts of country as well as in other countries also, like China, Sri Lanka, West Indies and all. Mining and industries, these are also two activities. This is also related to expel of the various hazardous waste that is being disposed, and sometimes if there is no proper mitigation has been taken or no proper recovery has been taken, so that could also create a kind of pollution. Bioaccumulation and biomagnification, these are the two terminologies. Within that, the condition is that the biodegradable substances, these are broken down by microbes into the harmless compounds. But the conservative pollutants are unable to break down and will build up in soil and marine environment. So conservative pollutants, that includes like pesticides, industrial chemicals like polychlorinated biphenyls or any other heavy metals like tin, lead or mercury. So these are remain in the unbroken stages, and that could be causing any other further consequences. So like bioaccumulation is, this is, as I mentioned, if the conservative pollutants that has entered into the living organism at any point of time, so that would accumulate within the tissues, and that organism will be able to build up very high level of pollutants. So this accumulation of that pollutants is called as a bioaccumulation. For example, oyster can concentrate DDT from 0.001 parts per million in seawater to 700 parts per million in their bodies. This additional accumulation, that is called as a bioaccumulation, and the rate at which pollutants are accumulated into the tissue of the organism, that influence like it concentration of pollution in water, and it can increase the water temperature also. While biomagnification is the another side of the bioaccumulation, that conservative pollutants that are not metabolized, and therefore when an organism containing a pollutant is eaten, the pollutant are simply passed on the predator and accumulate in its tissue. Like we are having example of this case, a Clear Lake that was in California, and there was a popular resort for bathers and anglers, but also a breeding ground of non-biting mids. So in 1949, DDT, that was one of the another ingredient of DDT. It was used as insecticide to kill the midges. But the volume of the lake was calculated, and 1 part of DDT was added to 70 million parts of water. 99% of the midges were killed, but over the next year, number has been rise, and in 1954 the spraying was repeated, and the slightly higher concentration which killed most of the midges. So in that situation we can see, because of the accumulation, because of the magnification, it has been affected on the predators. Now we'll move on the another component, that is the disaster management. So we are having, like I mentioned, the condition, the climatic condition and geography is very much fluctuating in our country. So we are very much vulnerable for drought, flood, cyclones, earthquake, landslides, and many more other disastrous phenomena. So among 36 states and union territories in the country, almost 22 states are prone to disasters, and major flood that are mainly caused because of Ganga, Brahmaputra, Meghna basin, which carries 60% of total river flow to our country. India has a long coastline of 5,700 kilometers. As I mentioned previously also, like 1/8 part of our geographical area is being prone of flood, while 1/6 part is being prone to drought, because these are the same situation, these are the different situation of the same coin. Flood consequently brought the drought situation. So now we are looking from management to the mitigation strategy of the disaster. Till now we were looking for only management or the precautions which could be taken for the before the disaster, but now it becomes a complete discipline. So disaster management, it becomes a multidisciplinary area where a wide range of issues that is covering from forecasting, warning, evacuation, searching and rescue, relief, reconstruction, rehabilitation, all are included into this. This becomes multi-sectoral. It involves not only administrators, but it involves other stakeholders also, like scientists, volunteers, planners and community people also. So we will go for few conditions, a few guidelines which can be given for mitigation program. Like pre-disaster mitigation can help to ensure for fast recovery. Mitigation measure must ensure protection of the natural and cultural assets. Hazard reduction method must take into account the various hazards faced by the affected community, and any mitigation program that must ensure effective partnership with the other stakeholders, with the government, with scientific professionals, private sectors, NGOs or the community. There are few disasters and their mitigation strategy has been taken. Like flood is one of the disaster, and as I mentioned, in the peninsular region, in the lower plain region of India, like Bihar, UP, West Bengal, these are very much prone to the disastrous area. So it could be natural also, and it could be ecological also, and it could be caused because of the anthropological factors also. So the mitigation measures can be like, there are some structural as well as some non-structural measures can be prepared. Like in case of structural measures, it could be reservoirs can be prepared pre-monsoon season, or there could be prevention of overbank spilling of the by the construction of embankments or flood walls, or it could be improve the drainage situation of the place. In case of non-structural measures, like all these floodplain management such as flood proofing and flood zoning, in that include the disaster management plans. Apart from that, there could be preparedness also, like flood forecasting and warning services can be given, disaster relief, flood fighting, public health measures or flood insurance, that can be another measures. So this can be shown with the disaster management cycle. Like if there is an emergency, so there should be restoration, there should be reconstruction, and at last capacity building and pre-impact can be looking into this. So these 4 parts are very important. Like there should be preparation, there should be mitigation, there should be recovery and response according to that. Another disaster is cyclone. That is also one of the important, but this is beyond the control and it is hazardous, and there are large revolving vortices in the atmosphere extending horizontally from 150 to 1000 km and vertically from the surface to 12 to 14 km. So strong winds spiraling anti-clockwise in the northern hemisphere blow around the cyclone's center at the lower level. So these are also one of the disaster. Again, these are some mitigation strategies which is given, like early warning system or prior communication can be given, or shelter belts can be developed, community cyclone shelter can be developed, construction of permanent houses, training and education, land use control, and major settlement and other important establishment should be located beyond or nearby the sea area. Landslide, this is also one of the disastrous situation. So you can see over here ki these are the conditions as well as what can be the mitigation measures. So in this module actually we learned about the different kind of pollutions. Before that we learned about the environment impact assessment, because if currently we are in the changing phase, we are every day creating a lot of projects, we are creating different river linkages kind of projects, expressways, dam and all. So it requires a kind of impact assessment. So because of that, MOEF, Ministry of Environment and Forest, has declared that there should be a clearance which need to give from the ministry, then only it could be moved further. So this EIA, what is the process, who is doing it and how it could be done, this can be understood by this. Apart from that, in terms of if this is the project is related to the society, so there is a social impact assessment that is also being done. There are also most of the public or most of the community be considered as a party of this assessment, and once they are getting clearance, so then only the project can be moved further. And in case of pollution, of course, number of factors are there which is causing pollutions, but we are having simultaneously mitigation strategies also, measures to control it also. And in case of disaster, that is also one of the part which has been very important related to the environmental factors, as I mentioned, flood, because our country is very much versatile in the nature and lot of geographical, climatic and many diversities are over there. So we are prone to many situations, many disasters, but at last we are having mitigation strategies, and now the government is also looking into that field and they are also preparing some policies to rescue out of that. Thank you so much. If you want to get some more updates or some more information, the e-text would be uploaded in the website. Thank you.